when we think healthy and sustainable diets, health is going to be the primary driver rather than sustainability. And often those two are linked together, right? The healthy outcome is the more sustainable outcome.
Welcome to the O for Food's Sake podcast, where we unwrap the joys and struggles of working in the food industry so you can thrive in what you do best while sustaining a rewarding and fulfilling career or business. We are your hosts, Lucy Wager, food industry consultant,
and Amy Wilkinson, food industry coach. We've worked in the food industry for the last 20 years, and we're here to share with you the benefit of our hindsight. Our podcast is for you to find new ways to cope with the daily struggles, but mostly to inspire you to work on what's not working to ultimately improve your career or business long term.
Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of O for Food's Sake. Today we're joined by a fabulous guest. We have Fran Haycock with us, who is Head of Sustainability at Greencore. Welcome to the podcast, Fran.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, really welcome. So Fran and I have met very recently, and I say met in the loosest sense of the term on Zoom through the Future Food movement. And Louis actually properly introduced us. We've had Louis on the podcast before, and we had a chat, and I just thought you'd be a great person to come on because we're talking quite a lot about sustainability on the podcast at the moment, aren't we, Amy?
Yeah.
And it's a thread that is going through a lot of work that I'm doing. And you didn't start in sustainability. So tell us how you've ended up doing what you're doing and what your background is.
Yeah, so I've got a slightly unique, unique background. And I have backgrounds in economics and finance. So that's my kind of university background and then change management really all the way through. So I've been in the UK 10 years now. So prior to that worked in New Zealand, as you can probably tell from my accent. So not a local. Well, I would consider myself now a local 10 years later, and worked for a dairy company in New Zealand, doing change management work there, and then have carried on with that really for most of that 10 years through with a commercial lens. So doing change management roles with kind of commercial program management, customer value chain, those kind of roles. And then about 3 years ago, just before COVID, I think it kind of started bubbling away that I wanted to use those skills. I love change management, and I never had a view of leaving the change management space, but wanted to do something different with those skills. Because in the commercial world, obviously, it's all about kind of making money and saving money for some customer or the business. But yeah, it was just I started thinking about it, and those thoughts became more and more frequent. And then approached Andy, my kind of old boss, and said, I'd love to come and work in the team. And at that point, he didn't have a role for me. So kind of put one together and came in as program manager, and then took leadership of the team about 18 months ago. So
was sustainability like a personal drive? Was it like that purpose feeling coming on? You know, you talk about like it was always about saving money, but now it's quite a switch to let's save the planet.
I don't know where it came from. As I say, it was kind of a seed that was planted maybe a couple of years before COVID, and then kind of started thinking about it more and more. So it's never been something, quite honestly, that I've personally been really passionate about my whole life. But I just thought I've got this skill set, this change management skill set that I love, and I knew the space needed those skills. So it was kind of, when you say you kind of feel a pull towards something, I kind of felt that it was pulling me towards it. And that feeling got stronger and stronger over COVID. And then, I just thought, I think this is the right new path for me, and took a leap of faith really. And it's turned out awesome.
Having that experience in finance and commercial must be really, really useful though, because such a big part of sustainability is obviously managing cost. And, one of the biggest barriers that people feel to sustainability is cost. So having your background and that change management mindset must be really useful.
Yeah, I'm finding it's becoming more and more useful, actually. So I think originally when I moved across, I thought, like everyone who's probably moved into sustainability from a different background, like how am I going to be useful in the space or relevant? And as sustainability evolves, actually the economics, kind of the macro kind of economic movements is becoming more and more relevant. And absolutely on the finance side, you think about things like CSRD and the link with the finance teams and everything becoming a stronger partnership between sustainability and finance. So yeah, I think it's becoming more and more relevant, which is useful because I thought, that won't be relevant ever. And it's becoming more and more relevant. So.
And actually, a thought that just came into my head is it must be actually really useful for the businesses. With your experience, you can really challenge that commercial barrier because you can see the bigger picture of, we need to do this from a sustainability perspective. And yes, it is a challenge commercially, but the bigger picture, I mean, I'm not very good at finance, but I'm sure you're very good at kind of explaining why it needs to be done. And actually financially, from a future perspective, there's a way of making it work. So you must be quite a strong person to have in that role.
Well, yeah, I mean, I hope so. I think the skill set's going to come in really handy and is coming in handy. I think one of the other things, other than the kind of knowledge of finance and economics, is just working in those teams and with those teams in the past. So knowing how the business works is really important for sustainability leaders. And I think for a lot of sustainability leaders, they've never kind of been in the business. They've always been in, especially those that have been in sustainability longer than me, they've never been in the business and know kind of how it works day to day. So I think having that understanding is definitely something that the business appreciates and respects. And I think that does get you some way with stakeholders in terms of being able to work with them effectively. So,
and you can talk their language as well, right? Like and understand the pressures they're under and aren't just kind of saying, well, we have to do X and not considering, what that means in front of a customer or in whatever situation it is.
Yeah, and I think the customer experience, like when I was in my commercial roles, I was kind of doing a lot more interaction with customers. I only had two main customers in my old role, but, a lot more interaction. And that's coming in very handy too, because I do a lot less of that now. But then when I do it on the sustainability front, it's becoming more and more common, actually. All of that experience comes in handy too. So, I think there's benefits on multiple fronts, actually.
Yeah. So what does your role entail now? Just for people that kind of are like, what does a sustainability person do?
Yeah.
I know it would be quite broad.
Inspire the next generation.
It's changing. I guess what I would say is it's changing so quickly. And I think the kind of, whether it's a kind of CSO role, whether it's head of sustainability, director of sustainability, it's actually quite different in different businesses and what businesses want from those roles. So, I mean, my view of the kind of CSO, I've put a bit of thought to this recently, actually, and someone else, there's been a bit of media on the kind of the CSO role and the pressure on that role and how it's changing. I think my current perspective on it is that it's kind of a transformation leader. It's transformation leadership. And ultimately, that's what I see my job as, being able to run a transformation program. And I guess businesses can think about various transformation programs that are kind of more common in terms of IT transformations and HR, transformations that have been around for longer. But I do see my job as a transformation leader and how can I kind of make sure I've got the right skills in the business, because you still need those specialist skills in the business too, right? In the team. So I've got to make sure I've got the specialists to help me so I can kind of do the leadership side. And
that sounds like such much more of an empowering kind of role, actually, as well. Because one of the questions I was going to ask you is like how sustainability or the view of sustainability has changed over the years. And actually, you kind of answered that question because it feels much more about transformation now, doesn't it, actually? And having to make changes quite quickly and empower the whole business to make those changes.
Yeah, I think it has definitely moved away from, there's absolutely still that compliance element to it, but it's definitely moved from kind of more environmentally focused and people-focused compliance through to retaining that compliance focus, but then adding a whole nother lens of the kind of transformation that's required. And to your point, Lucy, transformation at pace. So not only is it a transformation program, but it's probably one of the fastest transformation programs that, businesses have had to face into. So, and I think finding one of the challenges of sustainability teams now is having that skill set where you've got the compliance side covered still. And I think one of the questions for businesses now is, do you separate those teams, right? Do you have the compliance team that's kind of looking after all of the reporting, and do they sit elsewhere, whether that's in finance, if you're doing CSRD, that kind of makes sense. And do you keep the change management team separate? So otherwise there's you can get really distracted by the reporting and, the change management side of things loses out because compliance is so demanding.
Yeah. And actually, they're quite different skill sets as well, aren't they?
Yeah.
And potentially different people needed with different strengths.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking about my time in marketing and category management, and we used to spend so much time bogged down in reporting the past. And like you say, it was a different set of people and a different set of skills versus the people that are like, so what we're going to do with this? How are we going to move it forward? You know, it's the same kind of knowing what's the right thing to do, because both are important, but they are quite separate in some ways. But it's kind of the information and the data and the goals are still based around the same thing, right?
Yeah. And the compliance team drives the transformation, right? So those two teams might not be in the same structure, the same reporting line, but obviously the reporting feeds that change management team. So how are we performing, and how does that change what we're doing in the transformation space? So it'd be interesting to see where some big businesses are already designed in that way. So I'm really interested to see how that kind of plays out, especially in the big businesses in the next couple of years.
So tell us about the structure at Greencore and what you've implemented. Has it been over like last 18 months this has gone on?
Yeah, so I guess one of the situation I kind of found myself in when I came into role was that the business had just been through quite a big internal restructure. And as with that, you know, some of the roles in the team were cut. And, you know, I found myself in a big step up role with a smaller team that I was in previously. And my old role of program manager was removed from the structure too. So I had to quite quickly think how I was going to not only cope, but be successful. And, you know, the thing that came to mind was I have to decentralize this. And I think prior to that, the business had kind of looked to the sustainability team to do the doing. And I know that's not unique to kind of Greencore, but I knew that up until then, that's what was happening. So with fewer people, I knew I had to move the doing and the delivery out into the business. And that's when we set up what we call the plan ownership model, which we've discussed briefly, Lucy. So, you know, we've got 10 topics in our strategy. Our strategy is called the Better Future Plan. We set that up in 2019. And part of our new kind of approach was to have leaders in the business leading each of those topics. So we'd have an energy lead who happens to be our head of engineering. We'd have a water lead who happens to be one of our heads of environment. And we had 10 of those across the program. And then my team's role became about partnering with those leaders. And we provide kind of specialist counsel and project management kind of support and coaching for them and upskilling. And then day to day, the topics are being driven in the business. And so we set that up pretty much immediately when I came into role last March. So,
and how's it going?
Yeah, good question. No, really, really good. Really good. I'm pleased to say, I'm really pleased to say it's going really well.
What was the response initially? Because it must have been a big change. What was the response from people? Because they were nominated, weren't they? They didn't volunteer. So it wasn't like, who wants to do these brilliant new things?
Well, it was on top of everyone's normal job. So I don't think anyone would have volunteered probably. Yeah. But I guess the key to it was having executive leadership of the agenda. So our team report into the Chief Operations Officer. And, you know, he was aligned to the fact that we needed to decentralize, and him having ownership of the whole strategy. And then our Chief Commercial Officer owns 2/3 of our strategy as well. So he owns the sourcing with what we call sourcing with integrity and feeding with pride. And so they've got to be on board because it's their teams that are taking on the leadership. So I needed to make sure I had that first. And then it was a slow start, unsurprisingly. So the guys were nervous.
Well, particularly as everybody was going through change anyway. Like you say, there'd been a big restructure, so it was all kind of
come out of the restructure, and they didn't have the skills in sustainability. So none of those 10 leaders came in with, I've got sustainability expertise, or I know this area quite well. So they were all lacking kind of confidence and we needed to put our arms around them and upskill them and invest in them. But it took about maybe 6 months to get momentum. And then we've had about a year of good momentum, particularly in the last 6 months. So,
but I think for them, like, what a brilliant new skill to be trained in the world that we're in at the moment, because this is only going to become more important within businesses. So from a personal development perspective, like, I imagine it must have been oh my God, I've got to do something else. And it's something that I don't know anything about. But actually, what a brilliant thing to be trained in, because it's such a good skill to have. And all employers and all businesses are going to be interested in that skill set, because it's not something that we are just generally trained in.
Yeah, and I hope the guys realise that now, right? But 18 months ago, if I'd gone to them and said, "Hey, here's a great development opportunity for you," I don't think they would have landed. I don't think that would have landed that smoothly.
But I also wonder, we've done a podcast before on your purpose and, what is your why and that kind of thing. And I wonder whether, I was just thinking when you were talking about that, this is something that is a bit left field from people like the head of engineering, this is left field from his day to day, what he does at work, and a related but different skill set that is actually the thing that I think is really nice about sustainability is you are working towards making something better and doing good. And there's a much bigger picture, helping the world become more sustainable. That is quite a powerful thing. This is exaggerating, but it's helping you get out of bed in the morning. This is something positive that I'm doing, because the food industry is really challenging. And I feel like having something that is that positive could be a really good thing.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I definitely feel that way. Whether they do or not, I might ask a few of them a question now, Lucy, and say just check in with them and see how they're getting on. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I use procurement probably as a good example of this. So, in our sourcing with integrity pillar, we have two topics. One, responsible sourcing, where we have things like cage-free eggs and deforestation-free soy, scope 3. And the other is human rights global supply chain. So we've got, I think we've got 5 people in 5 colleagues in our head of as our procurement leadership team, of which 2 of them are leading in the strategy. So we've got a head of procurement on responsible sourcing and on global human rights. And when I think about the procurement world, and I think they've really come to realise that in the last 6 months, and my team's relationship with the procurement team has gone, step changed in terms of where it was 12 months ago. And I'm really, really pleased with where we are with them. And I think sustainability is coming so intertwined. You'd think procurement going forward is about sustainable procurement.
Yeah.
There is no other procurement that is sustainable procurement. So I think the team in procurement have realised that the penny's dropped for sure, especially with our director of procurement. He knows that for him to be a successful head of procurement, director of procurement in the future, he needs to be all over this. And I think the more of those kind of pennies I can get to drop around the business, the more effective, I can be as a leader. So.
Yeah, and I think that's what I love about the approach that you've had of having all of these, the leads on it. I think it just brings that ownership, doesn't it? And
makes it real, doesn't it?
Yeah, it makes it real.
This isn't something that we've just got to talk about. It has to happen.
And when Lucy and I do a lot of training, communication skills training stuff mainly with MPD teams, and one of the biggest barriers that they come up against is people aren't bought in because it hasn't been filtered down from a senior level. And what you're talking about is that it's being filtered in across the business from a senior level, as this is important, everybody. It's not, we're not going to pay lip service to tick some boxes on sustainability now. We've got to be proactive in this. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick breather here to hear from our fantastic sponsors. They help keep the podcast going, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Are you a food manufacturing business? Is your customer service team pushed to the limit over the festive period? This shouldn't be the case.
Meze is a branded online ordering and customer service platform that lets your customers place, amend, and track their orders at any time, on any device. An Amazon-like experience. Tiffin Sandwiches has already saved over £100,000 in efficiencies this year.
Meze is easy to set up and it connects to your other systems. Visit the website to book a no-strings demo. Go to meze.io. That's MEZZE.io. Meze, Amazon-like ordering for your customers.
Yeah, I mean, accountability is one of the other big themes for me at the moment. And that's probably one of the big lessons I took away from, we've just finished our financial year a couple of weeks ago, last week. And I think back on the key learnings from the year, driving accountability and having a structure and governance that allows you to drive that is absolutely essential to making progress. And that's got to come, working with the board level all the way through the exec, driving accountability through the execs, and then down through the leadership team, and day-to-day accountability. So it's just absolutely, when the accountability is not there, or there's some confusion on who's accountable, that's when it goes wrong. And, we've had many examples of feeling the pain of that. So, as we work this out. So that would definitely be one of the top tips. My top takeaways is, set up a structure where accountability is really, really clear and that the right leaders are driving that and they feel pressure. People have got to feel pressure to deliver. That pressure can't just sit with the sustainability team. So you've got to find a way of sharing the pressure throughout the business.
Yeah. Sharing that pressure, the accountability, and not making the assumption that everybody is driven by the fact that it is about saving the planet, because not everybody, we might be driven by that because, we're closer to it, but not everybody is. So there's got to be, you've got to create other ways to motivate people to do the things that need to be done.
Find the things that motivate them, I guess. Yeah.
Well, it's that carrot and stick, right? And as a leader, when I think about my role, part of me refining my skills going forward is how knowing what carrot and stick tools you've got in the toolbox and when to deploy them, because it's leading the sustainability agenda it's a tough role, and sometimes you've got to be really firm with the business, and there's friend or foe moments, so I do find that a challenge, and I'm sure I'll continue to find that a challenge throughout my career. But
so what is next? What's next for Greencore's sustainability mission? What's next for you? It sounds like you've achieved so much in the last 18 months or so.
Yeah, so our focuses for this year, there's a handful really. So there's a few targets on our immediate radar. So we've got a big year in responsible sourcing in terms of soy and cage-free eggs. So we've got targets in both of those spaces. So there'll be a lot of work going on against those in the coming 12 months. Reporting-wise, we're starting to prepare for CSRD now. We are disclosing our first report in FY26, so we're on the 2-year countdown. So we're starting to mobilise behind that and get ourselves organised to do a double materiality assessment and the gap analysis, and then move forward with preparing our data. So, even that in itself is a huge transformation program. And then carbon. So we've got a big program on energy, a bit of catch up to do, not something we've been focused on as a business for the last few years through COVID, etc. So big focus on step changing our energy agenda and getting more of a handle on scope 3, like most businesses, getting under the bonnet of the levers. So what are the levers we can pull in scope 3? How do we do it? Which one do we pull first? How hard do we pull it? Yeah, we talk about levers a lot in the business. So I think the big focus for the next 12 months is understanding those levers in detail and getting the teams to feel confident pulling them and knowing how to back it up with data and model our opportunities with data.
Just to explain, because some listeners won't know what Scope 3 is. So give us a bit of a rundown on some of the terminology that people are probably sitting in businesses going, I don't want to ask what that means. I feel like I should know.
Yeah, no problem.
So
yeah, no worries. So the simplest way to explain the Scope 3 for Greencore would be, so we make sandwiches. I don't know if the listeners on the podcast know us, and many won't actually, because we manufacture for the retailers. So if you think about a sandwich that you would buy for your lunch, so let's say it's a chicken and bacon sandwich, a high carbon sandwich. So most of our scope 3 sits in the ingredients. So be the carbon associated with the chicken and the bacon, the bread, mayonnaise, etc. that goes in that sandwich. And then the packaging is also part of our scope 3. So our scope 3 footprint is primarily driven by what we buy in ingredients wise and how we package it, and a little bit of soy in there. And then that's primarily our scope 3 footprint, or most of it. So for us, it's going to be the levers for change are primarily around recipe design. So can we design things differently with a lower carbon footprint? So for example, on the chicken and bacon, would you make it a chicken sandwich, not a chicken and bacon, or, for example.
Mm-hmm. And that's challenging because they're chicken and bacon Caesar is like, you see it everywhere. It's like we've become accustomed to, so there's some big risks, aren't there, to those decisions, and balancing how you make those decisions, because it can be a really good decision from if you're looking at it just purely from a carbon decision, but how do you make sure it's the right decision for the consumer and they're not just going to switch to somewhere else?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, so it's super challenging. The product space really, really challenging, because ultimately the retailers or whoever we manufacture for it's their product. So it's their label, it's their branding on the sandwich or the ready meal. Very, very challenging, and ultimately it's their brand on the packaging. So whether it's the sandwich or the ready meal. So they make the customer make the final choice about what the recipe is. I think, and ultimately the retailers and the other businesses, they're all on different journeys and they're all at different paces in terms of how they're looking to change. I mean, the other thing is consumer demand. To your point, Lucy, like the demand's got to be there, and this is where it's chicken and egg, right? And it's frustrating for consumers and it's frustrating for businesses because who's going to move first? And we want you to move. No, we want you to move. I mean, consumers are saying they want options. They're saying what we're hearing is, give us options. We might still make the choice on the chicken and bacon, or we might try your delicious falafel sandwich instead. But if you don't give us the choice, I'm making this super simple, right? If you don't give us the choice of the falafel sandwich, then we'll always choose the chicken and bacon because we don't have it.
And they need to be educated as well. They need to know what decision they're making.
Yeah.
And at the moment, there's not a lot of information there for them to make on a product by product basis.
And almost the size of the impact of it. Because we were talking the other day, we were talking about strawberries, like completely random, but eating strawberries out of season, and that we buy them for our kids because we know they'll eat them. There's different drivers going on for you, but also you kind of know that you probably shouldn't. They don't taste as good. It probably... there's more energy going into growing them, but you can't really quantify what that is. So you kind of go,
and you're not thinking about that. The lever that you're pulling at that moment is feeding my child, and just making them happy. Like it's not front of mind.
But if you were more aware of how big an impact it was, like actually it takes 4 times as much carbon. I don't know if it does or not, but whatever that number is, you might make a different decision. But it's a really hard one. It's really hard because it's one of those things where, just like we were talking about the people that you work with in the business, like everybody has different motivations, and consumers, don't they? So, but we have a responsibility as an industry to do what we can to.
And give the information.
Yeah, let's see how the consumer space evolves. It's going to be super interesting, like really, really interesting to see how that changes. I think the main driver for people at the moment is health. So what we're thinking is, health is going to be, when we think healthy and sustainable diets, health is going to be the primary driver. Rather than sustainability. And often those two are linked together, right? The healthy outcome is the more sustainable outcome. But let's see how healthy and sustainable diets evolves. It's moving so quickly. It's super exciting, but very complex. Lots of really talented people work in the industry on that topic. And I absolutely see it as an opportunity for Greencore and something, as a major food businesses that is part of our responsibility as a big manufacturer to support that agenda, given some of the challenges the UK faces on health. It's pretty obvious now what food businesses need to do. So absolutely, and I'm super passionate about that topic personally as well.
You see yourself staying in sustainability for the foreseeable future. You've made the right decision switching to sustainability.
No, I do see it as the long game now. It was funny because when I made the decision to move in, when you just have a strong kind of gut feel that it's right and that it will work out. So when it did work out, I thought, and I was given a great opportunity, March last year to lead the team and lead the agenda, and I'm really grateful for that. Quite early on in my, prior to that, I'd only been in sustainability a couple of years, so absolutely love it. And the food system particularly is so complex. It's obviously a huge footprint, change in the food system. You can really make a difference. And it's just full of amazing people doing awesome things. So, totally motivated to.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a really good point because the food industry, I mean, we love the food industry and think it's a great place to work. But we're all so busy, like having some structure around, what you've implemented and having that structure and that reporting structure is what is needed, isn't it, to make sustainability work and to raise that awareness. And I was just thinking, so within the business where so much of it is about ingredients and sourcing, and you kind of had that penny drop within the procurement team, there must be lots to do within development teams as well, because one of the big things, because of what I talk about, Fran, is about how product developers understand what they can do and what their part is and the things that they need to be thinking about to make sure that at a product level right at the beginning, that is put into play and sustainability is at the forefront of the mind and you're making decisions. A bit like what you were saying, Amy, you need the information there at an ingredient level to understand what decisions you're making, because it's not always obvious. some things are really obvious, but it's not always obvious.
Yeah, and I think what we, I call our kind of product team the frontline team. So I refer to kind of making sure that the frontline team, and by frontline I mean kind of facing into customers, facing into suppliers, that they have the skills and the confidence, right? That we set them up for success, and that's a really key part of my role. And I think the motivation is there, Lucy. Like, I don't know all the product guys by name personally, but from the team that I have interacted with, the motivation is there. They're curious. They see it as their ability to change, make a difference. Because some of these sandwiches that teams are designing, we make millions of them a year, millions. So they, it's quite a powerful position to be in. And they can make quite a difference. So, that team actually on the commercial kind of sales side is going to be a focus for me in terms of climate literacy and upskilling this year, making sure that they have the knowledge and the confidence. And I think a lot of it is a confidence thing.
Yeah.
So they need to feel confident to have those discussions with the customer and the suppliers.
Yeah, definitely. Because there's a lot of information out there, but it's not our normal language in development. It's something quite new that we know is important. And yes, that's really good to hear.
It's from a nutrition side too. So nutrition, obviously, the fat, salt, sugar's always been, it's an evolution of what they've done in nutrition, which is exciting for them too. So
it really is. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it does make developing products, another layer of kind of complexity.
It's just another challenge. Just when we thought we couldn't be challenged
in case it wasn't hard enough again already, we'll just add something else.
So, but no, it's exciting for them, and they are excited about it. So just giving them the tools they need now to do it.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about people listening. I think from what you've been saying, it's really about getting that knowledge up, isn't it? And knowledge and understanding, no matter what department you work in, understanding what the terminology means and what the impact is for each department is the key to playing their role in sustainability.
Yeah. And I guess the leaders of those departments have to understand first. Because I always think, the upskilling, I think you need to do both at the same time. I think there's a top down, like I would say my steer to people would be start at the top with your upskilling and your buy-in. You've got to get your CEO and your exec, absolutely. But you've got to kind of create the squeeze where you're coming from the bottom up too. So one of the things we do to support the bottom up momentum is we do an all colleague like a colleague sustainability webinar once a quarter. And so the invite goes out to all colleagues with an email. So we do have colleagues in the factory that don't have an email, but everyone with an email. And we do have a colleague app, so we can launch it on that too, which gives those colleagues access. And so we do an update on our progress every quarter. It was focused on one of our strategic pillars. So one quarter will be feeding, making, sourcing, and then we do an end of year wrap up, which is actually coming up in next month. But that gives people an opportunity to learn. So how do you kind of get access to as many colleagues as possible is a challenge, because there's so many other programs that are also trying to get access to colleagues, and colleagues can only handle so much. So you've got to be sympathetic to that too. Yeah. So I'm trying to do both. I'm trying to do top down and bottom up, but it is a challenge.
Yeah.
It sounds like you've achieved a lot in quite a short space of time, to be honest.
Yeah, I feel maybe that's why I feel tired, Lucy. Maybe maybe that's it. Maybe that is why.
What's your summary of the last 18 months? I'm knackered. That's
my heart is full, but I'm really tired.
Yeah.
But at least you've got something to show for it. It's there. You've achieved. So that's really exciting.
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it, for sustainability and leaders? There must be so many people trying to drive this in businesses and making no ground, right? So and I am grateful. I am grateful that all the hours that go into it and the tough conversations we're actually are moving us forward, rather than there'll be many, many examples of where that's not the case.
And you feel like you're hitting your head against a brick wall, and that's not a good place to be.
I mean, it is a roller coaster for sure. Sustainability leadership is, you have good days and not so good days. And it's it's more of a roller coaster role than I've ever had in my career. So, but more rewarding than I've ever had in my career too. So, so there's the trade-off right there. So,
Oh, that's great to hear. So it's been amazing talking to you. Like, it's really interesting. And I think a lot for listeners to think about. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way? Are you on LinkedIn? Like, how can they get in touch?
Yeah, no, that is the best way. Yeah, relatively active on LinkedIn. So yeah, just Fran. I'm Fran Haycock on LinkedIn, or search Greencore, and you'll probably find me as well. So yeah, I am keen to support other sustainability leaders and anyone that's looking to get into sustainability too. Because I think there's a myth that if you don't have a sustainability background, then you won't be able to get into the team.
Or knowing how to get into sustainability.
Yeah.
So I think you're a really good example of that transition.
Yeah, those transferable skills. Yeah. So you're happy to have conversations with anybody that's either in the sustainability area or interested in it.
Or not. Please do reach out. It is our reporting season at the moment. So if I don't get back to you in the next 3 weeks, that's probably why. We are kind of, peak reporting season. Our annual report is going to be out in the next couple of months. So always a busy time for sustainability leaders. So absolutely. Very, very happy to help. So please do reach out if there's anything that resonates with you from the conversation and you want to hear a bit more about it.
Amazing.
Fabulous.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Fran.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
And we'll see everybody else next time.
See you next time. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that this has been useful to you. As ever, we would love it if you could rate and review the podcast on your podcast app. It really does help us reach and support more foodies out there.
We'd also love it if you'd come and join us in the Facebook group, the O for Food's Sake community. And if you want to get in touch with us personally, Lucy is available for consultancy advice and training and can be found on LinkedIn as Lucy Wager.
And if you want to reach out to Amy for any one-to-one coaching, group facilitation or training, then contact her on LinkedIn at Amy Wilkinson Coach. Thanks for listening and see you next time.
See you next time.